Welcome back to the Black Hills and Eastern Railroad, everybody. Today we're applying decals finally to our Visitor from the East SD40-2 project. I have Microscale decals here, and we're going to get busy putting these on. Clearly you can see that this decal set has been run into before. I used this on a project a very long time ago, so we're actually going to cut into this again for another locomotive. Looks like you can do several Conrail engines on here, and I'm probably going to open my mouth and expose my ignorance about Conrail in some way, shape, or form here. I've gotten already some direction from you faithful viewers on YouTube. I've gotten a tip or two that has helped this project. So anyway, what I've chosen to do here with the engine, this finish is pretty glossy. So this is our True Color paint. You remember back to when we applied the True Color paint here, and that seems glossy enough to me to not have to have a top coat applied to it to hide the decal film. Some of these railroad colors they go on pretty flat, and you end up needing to apply a gloss coat to hide the decal film above it. Otherwise, you get that sheen around the decals that's undesirable. We're not going to do that here. We're just going to go ahead and get started applying decals. So I have here on my workbench some paint brushes to move the decals around. I have a paper towel in a shallow dish with some distilled water on it. You want to use distilled water so you don't have any of that contaminants or leftovers drying and coloring and being visible on your model. I've got Microscale Microsol. I've got Microscale Microset. These are two decal setting solutions, and we'll use the paint brushes to move that stuff around. And I've got a scissors here to cut the decals off of the sheet here. Probably end up using a hobby knife or two as well to move the decals to do final positioning on the model itself. Microscale is a little different because they apply the film only around where the graphics are going to be that you're going to use. With pretty much any other manufacturer, I found that you want to cut as close to the decal as you possibly can. And the reason for that is that the decal film ends up covering the whole sheet. And what you don't want is for that decal film to be, any chance of that decal film to show up on your model. So the best policy there is to cut as closely to the graphic that you want. I'm a little bit at a disadvantage here because I don't know exactly what these things look like because I'm not nearly as familiar with them as BN engines. So then I want that those Conrail letters. So I'm going to cut out around that for the right underneath the radiator section. You can kind of sometimes tell when that decal is ready to slide off of the sheet, and we're at that point now. I'm going to slide my decal setting solution in here. And open up the bottles. This holder that I got here is an idea that I stole off of the second section podcast. I've spilled more of this setting solution than I've used over my modeling lifetime, and these guys came up with the idea, or maybe they got it, maybe they stole it from someone else, to basically make this holder. So what I did is I drilled out with a spade bit just a little bit bigger than this bottle, so I don't have nearly as much of a chance of spilling that whole entire bottle as I did if it was just sitting on the bench. So we're going to use the blue stuff, the Microsol or Microset first. Spread that on the model. I'm going to use a little bigger brush here. Microset in the area where the decal is to be applied. And again, we're going to check our prototype pictures before we set that on finally. Then, so we got that on there. We slid that very carefully off of the decal paper. And keep in mind that these things are horribly delicate. Some manufacturers and some batches from certain manufacturers are more delicate than others. And we're going to want to take a look at prototype pictures again And it looks to me like, and we might want to apply just a little bit of water underneath there, which I'm doing. We need to move that decal quite a ways forward. If you need to grab a hold of these things, what we're looking for is that can opener part to be centered underneath the dynamic brake section. Getting pretty close, and now we're kind of looking for level and final positioning here. And again, I'm going to take a look at some roster shots to make sure that we get this lined up exactly where it should be. Keeping in mind that not all your commercial decals are going to be exactly true to the prototype, and especially when they're meant to cover a general fleet of locomotives. Anyway, so we're going to go over and grab a brush full of our Microscale and just lightly brush that over the top of your decals. And the purpose of this stuff is to sort of melt that decal just a little bit and get it to form down over the contours of the shell, the locomotive shell or the rail car, whatever it is that you're applying decals to, and get that painted on look, for lack of a better phrase. And again, we're going to check our prototype photos. I noticed I bumped that just a little bit. I think that's supposed to be up right next to the dynamic brake inlet. We're going to raise that up just a little tiny bit, and it looks like we had a little bit of a downward slant as we move forward here anyway, so probably okay with that positioning. We got our micro set on there. We're going to leave that one alone. We're going to move on to that Conrail logo underneath the radiator. Sometimes Microscale will include a data sheet to the best of their abilities on the road or the engine in question. And I would say that for an SD40-2, this particular sheet is less than helpful for our particular prototype, especially because let's see, we've got a looks like what a GP35, a GG1, and some flavor of a General Electric engine here. And on the other side, General Electric in an old Jeep looks like a early GP7 or some flavor of GP7. So that's no help. Again, consult your prototype photographs for details. Your individual mileage may vary. And as it were, I couldn't find a photograph of my particular model or my particular road name that I'm doing here, so I have to make the assumption I've got a picture that's one digit away from this road name, road number. So I'm going to go ahead and set this lettering sort of to the back of the radiator section, just below those latches there on the doors. That seems to make sense to me, I guess. Again, those of you that didn't want me to do it this way should have been here to stop me or direct me otherwise. I'm putting my Microscale on here now, and I've got to run do an errand, and I will be back here after a bit to apply some more decals. And making sure that thing will move around. If you find that you have either too much water, which it looks like we've got here, if you find that you've got too much water or too much decal set solution, you can always use a little paper towel and use that. Just press it up against the surface, not on the decal, but on the plastic, on the model, and use that capillary action. Will pull that excess fluid up into the paper towel. And I want to be very careful for the other decals that we've already set. I see we got a little bit of a crack there on that decal. Hopefully that settles down as the decal cures over the model. And what we'll do is apply just a little more setting solution over the top of that. And you can start to see that there's a few wrinkles that have started to appear where the decal film is appearing, and that's a good thing. That means the decal is starting to set. And at this point, it's very important not to mess with the decal very much if you've got it set where you want it, in which it's pretty close here in our case. By now, we have decals that are workable. And according to my prototype pictures, those are right down there at the top of this hatch cover here. So the bottoms of those numbers are lined up with the hatch cover. And then I'll place them individually. And we'll line them all up once we have them on the side of the cab here. So here's the big moment. So I'm going to grab a little bit more microset and bring those numbers down. If you compare this with the prototype pictures, the actual numbers are slightly larger than what's printed in the decal set, but this isn't the first time I've run into a discrepancy in a Microscale set. Most egregiously, that DM&E engine that you see, the numbers aren't even the correct font there, much less the correct size. So, and that's the only thing they give you with that set. I'm using my hobby knife here to more correctly position these numbers. And you also want to look for spacing. And sometimes you got to fudge a little bit because you don't have, in this case, we're using a smaller font here. I believe the font is reasonably correct, but the size of it just isn't quite big enough for what I would like to see it be. One of you Conrail guys can probably chime in here and tell me that, well, you should have used maybe Matt Wilkie's Circuit City set or something like that. I had this on hand, and just like this locomotive, I had all the parts I needed on hand here, and I had the decal set on hand, and I'm not that big of a Conrail nut anyway, so we're going to go with this. And what will happen here, we'll apply the Microscale. But we're going to want to wait a little bit while these firm up to the plastic on that cab side, because otherwise what they'll do is they'll float off, or they'll float out of position with just the slightest touch of the brush. So that to me looks pretty decent. And we might go over the can opener logo here again. Certainly the Conrail logo, I like to retouch those, or I like to retouch ones that haven't been touched. And obviously I've been over the can opener logo with Microscale already. That just helps things to really settle down over the detail in the model itself and look like they're actually decals that are on there rather than something that was laid on the top. We'll go on to the ends now, and we're not going to do the number boards just yet. That looks a lot better already, even if they're not lined up. And I determined from my photos that it looks to me like those decals are broken on the sides of the blower housing. So I have cut a little tiny piece of white for the top of that dustbin there. So I ended up having to go to a BN set of all places to get some Fs to mark the front of our locomotive here for those relevant ignorant people. I'm applying the factory supplied number boards here from the Kato model. On these older models, they had just a solid plastic. My research tells me that most of these Conrail units, in fact the one we're doing here, had black number boards with white numbering on them. I wasn't very happy with the numbering supplied with the Microscale set as far as the match to the Kato or the Conrail model. So we're going to use numbers out of a BN set. So I'm on to numbering or setting number board numbers here. I'm using a Burlington Northern caboose decal set for this. And I got a little bit lucky because I found the 6 and the 4 next to each other in the set. And then I had to do the 9 and the 7 obviously separately. And that helps out a lot because obviously the 6 and the 4 are lined up with each other, so that just leaves the 9 and the 7. So that about does it for the Microscale Conrail decals. We've got added a couple other sets, like I said, the BN caboose set for the number board numbers, and the another BN engine set for the Fs on the front here. I don't know with the side seals. I can't find any evidence that there's any markings on that in the era in which we're modeling anyway. The early to mid 80s ish, maybe late 80s. One of you Conrail guys can jump in here and tell me I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any more needed besides maybe the warning labels on the hood, on the doors and stuff. I don't really have any of that stuff on hand here that I know of. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll go ahead and leave that be. The next steps here will be, of course, moving on to weathering, sealing the decals on, maybe a dull coat. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do the weathering yet, but we'll, I guess, cross that bridge when we come to it. We'll do some final assembly, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. But for now, here's where we're going to pull the pin. If you like the content here, go ahead and hit that like button. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. Subscribe for more, and hopefully, I'll see you on the next one.